India's political landscape is as vast and varied as the country itself, home to over 1 billion people, speaking dozens of major languages, practicing many religions, and shaped by centuries of history. Among the most sensitive and persistent issues in Indian elections is the question of identity: who belongs, who is an outsider, and how these lines are drawn and redrawn by political actors. Nowhere is this more evident than in the narrative surrounding Bengali-speaking Muslims, particularly in the northeastern state of Assam and the eastern state of West Bengal. Understanding this phenomenon requires a deep dive into the historical context, the evolution of political rhetoric, and the ways in which these strategies play out differently across regions. To grasp the depth of this issue, we must first look at the roots. The story begins long before modern India's formation. The region that is now Bangladesh was, before 1947, part of British India's province of Bengal, partitioned in 1947, which divided India and Pakistan along religious lines, led to massive migrations, Hindus from what became East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, moving into India, and Muslims moving in the opposite direction. Assam and West Bengal, sharing long borders with what would become Bangladesh, were deeply affected by these shifts. Then came the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War, which triggered another exodus, as millions of refugees fled into neighboring Indian states, especially Assam and West Bengal. This complicated history of migration set the stage for decades of tension, particularly in Assam. The state's indigenous communities, already feeling marginalized, began to see the influx of Bengali-speaking migrants, both Hindu and Muslim, as a threat to their own identity, resources, and political power. The Assam agitation of 1979 to 1985 was a watershed moment. Led by the All Assam Students' Union, it demanded the identification and expulsion of illegal immigrants, whom many assumed were Bengali-speaking Muslims. The agitation culminated in the tragic Nellie Massacre of 1983, where over 2,000 people, mostly Bengali-speaking Muslims, were killed. Out of this turmoil emerged the Assam Accord, which set 1971 as the cutoff date for citizenship, but implementation remained fraught. Enter the Bharatiya Janata Party, or BJP, in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Originally not a major player in the Northeast, the BJP began to find electoral opportunities by tapping into long-standing anxieties over migration. Unlike regional parties that focused on ethnic Assamese identity, the BJP reframed the issue through the lens of Hindu nationalism. In its narrative, Bengali-speaking Muslims were portrayed not only as illegal immigrants, but as a demographic and cultural threat to both Assamese and Hindu identity. At the same time, the party extended a hand of protection to Bengali-speaking Hindus, casting them as refugees in need of sanctuary, a narrative that would culminate in the passage of the Citizenship Amendment Act, or CAA, in 2019. The CAA is a crucial piece of this puzzle. The law offers a path to citizenship for non-Muslim migrants from Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, explicitly excluding Muslims. This legislative move was justified by the BJP as a way to protect persecuted minorities, but critics saw it as a clear signal. Bengali-speaking Hindus would be embraced, while Muslims, regardless of how long they had lived in India, would be treated with suspicion. The law, combined with efforts like the National Register of Citizens, NRC in Assam, which required residents to prove their ancestry, left many Bengali-speaking Muslims in a precarious position, facing the prospect of statelessness. These policies and narratives have had profound consequences on the ground. In Assam, the identification of foreigners has upended lives. Families who have lived in the region for generations suddenly find themselves having to produce decades-old documents to prove citizenship. Many, unable to do so, are branded as D-voters, doubtful voters, or even sent to detention camps. The fear and stigma are palpable, creating divisions not just between Hindus and Muslims, but between Assamese speakers and Bengali speakers, locals and those perceived as outsiders. Meanwhile, in West Bengal, the dynamics are somewhat different. The state has a long tradition of Bengali identity, that cuts across religious lines. Here, Bengali-speaking Muslims make up a significant portion of the population. The BJP's rise in the state has been relatively recent, challenging the dominance of the Trinamool Congress, led by Mamata Banerjee. In West Bengal, the BJP has sought to replicate its Assam strategy, raising concerns about infiltration and the alleged presence of millions of illegal Bangladeshis. However, the response from the electorate has been more mixed. While the rhetoric does find resonance in certain areas, especially among non-Bengali-speaking communities and in border districts, the deep-rooted sense of Bengali identity in the state has often acted as a counterweight. The consequences of this political strategy are far-reaching. For many Bengali-speaking Muslims, especially in Assam, the constant suspicion and need to prove one's citizenship have become an everyday reality. The psychological toll cannot be overstated. Children born in India, whose parents and even grandparents were born in India, are suddenly asked to prove their right to belong. This creates an environment of fear and alienation, deepening mistrust between communities. Human rights organizations have raised alarms about the humanitarian impact, pointing out that the focus on identity distracts from pressing issues like jobs, education, and healthcare. Politically, the BJP's strategy has yielded results in some areas. By framing the narrative as a defense of Hindu and indigenous Assamese interests, the party has managed to consolidate a significant voter base in Assam and make inroads in West Bengal. However, this approach also risks long-term social cohesion. The polarization it creates can lead to violence, as history has shown, and makes the task of governing a diverse, pluralistic society ever more challenging. It is important to recognize that the rhetoric around illegal Bangladeshis is often more political than factual. Census data and independent studies have repeatedly shown that the scale of undocumented migration is frequently exaggerated for political ends. Yet, the power of such narratives lies not in their accuracy, but in their ability to tap into anxieties about identity, security, and belonging. Looking state by state, the BJP's approach does adjust to local realities. In Assam, the focus is on the protection of indigenous Assamese culture and rights, with the illegal immigrant label serving as a rallying cry. In West Bengal, the emphasis shifts to concerns about law and order, religious identity, and the supposed threat of demographic change. In both cases, the core strategy remains the same: use identity-based polarization to consolidate the Hindu vote, while portraying Muslims, especially those who are Bengali-speaking, as outsiders. This strategy has also had the effect of drawing sharp lines between communities that have coexisted for generations. In Assam, for example, the divide is not just religious, but also linguistic, with the Assamese speakers sometimes viewing all Bengali speakers, regardless of religion, with suspicion. The BJP, however, is careful to distinguish between Bengali-speaking Hindus, whom it seeks to protect, and Muslims, whom it targets as outsiders. This selective approach is designed to maximize electoral gains, but it also embeds deeper divisions in society. In the end, the politics of identity in India is a double-edged sword. It can yield short-term electoral dividends, but at the cost of long-term social harmony. The ongoing debates over citizenship, migration, and belonging are likely to persist, especially as political parties continue to find them useful for mobilizing voters. The challenge for India's democracy is to find ways to acknowledge and address legitimate concerns about migration and identity without succumbing to the politics of fear and division. The story of Bengali-speaking Muslims in Indian politics is thus a cautionary tale, a reminder of how easily identity can be weaponized for political gain, and how vital it is to uphold the principles of inclusion, justice, and equal citizenship that lie at the heart of India's constitution.